Welcome inside the War Room. I'm your host, Andrew Valancourt, and we're back today for episode 79 of the Dynasty War Room podcast. On today's show, we're going to talk Breakout or Fakeout. I have 10 players that have broken out this year. They're off to really great starts to the fantasy football season, and we're going to break down whether or not those breakouts and that hot start is real or fake, if they're here to stay, if it's a mirage. So we're going to dive into that in just a minute. But as always, make sure you are following this podcast on your platform of choice. We're on everything out there, Spotify, Apple, YouTube, you name it, we're there. So go make sure you are following along so you don't miss any future shows. And find us on social media as well, Twitter or X at Dynasty War Room. We're on Facebook, YouTube channel, as I mentioned. And so go find us there, follow along, happy to interact and answer any questions on trades, show topics, anything that you want to bring up. Again, at Dynasty War Room on Twitter. And one more quick reminder to go and download Fast Draft. It's a new fantasy best ball app. It's awesome. If you use my code WARROOM, all one word, you get a full deposit match up to $50 when you deposit and then play through any of their different draft modes. So yes, you can still draft even though you're in season. It's a really fun way to stay active and drafting, even though the draft season for traditional fantasy football is over. You can still partake in all the new fun contests over at Fast Draft with my code WARROOM. All right, breakout or fake out. I've got two quarterbacks, 2 running backs, 4 wide receivers, and 2 tight ends to discuss on today's show. And let's kick things off at the quarterback position like we usually do. I got 2 names here. And the first one on the list is Caleb Williams, Chicago Bears quarterback. He is currently the QB3 on the season using standard 4-point passing scoring. And, Caleb Williams has been one of those guys that I think has been a little bit better for fantasy than he has been for real life. But we did see him take a step against Dallas. So week 3 was certainly a huge improvement for him and his team as a whole after the debacle against the Lions and the breakdown in week 1 against Minnesota. So Dallas, obviously a much easier defense to face than both Detroit and Minnesota. But we saw a lot of good things out of Caleb Williams. The connection with Rome Odunze is great. You got a lot of different people involved in that offense. And it seemed like things were finally gelling a bit in that game. Now, I don't want to read too much into just one start against a subpar defense, but I do think that Caleb Williams, his breakout is for real. I think that there is enough talent there that he is going to continue to be a good option for your fantasy football teams, whether that's in a single quarterback league or in Superflex. I think he 100% should be started in Superflex, and I think you can start him, especially over the next, the first half of the season, really. It's not until you get closer to the playoffs where the Bears' schedule gets a bit worse in terms of the defenses that they're going to face. Detroit and Minnesota in the first 2 weeks were 2 of the tougher defenses they're going to face all year. And they got a nice upcoming schedule. If you pull up your sleeper app and you look at the schedule, you're going to see a lot of green for Caleb Williams throughout the next handful of weeks. And so I think it's going to be a nice window of opportunity for Williams to fully take that next step. And I think he can be a quarterback that finishes as a top 10 guy, somebody that you can feel good about having in your lineup to the point where you maybe aren't worrying too much about the matchups like you do with a lot of the other kind of fringy QB1, QB2 guys. So I think he's here to stay. I'm not going to totally look into just week 3. Again, I do want to caution a bit given the rough-ish starts in the first 2 weeks. But I think it's trending the right direction. I'm optimistic. I was a believer in the offseason. I think it's just one of those things where Caleb Williams has the ability to be a really good fantasy quarterback because he extends plays. He's shown that he's not afraid to run the ball when need be. And, he's a bit of a gunslinger out there. So having the improvement in year 2 from Rome Odunze has been really helpful for him. And so I think the breakout is for real. The second quarterback on the list is Daniel Jones, Indianapolis Colts quarterback. He is the QB4 so far through 3 weeks, and we talked about him a bit on last week's show in terms of, okay, is he here to stay as the long-term option? I wasn't quite sold last week, and I'm still not all the way there, although I will say that the fact that the Colts went to 3-0, I do think that we don't have to worry about a quarterback change for the rest of the season. I think this is clearly going to be Daniel Jones and his job. So I think in a way it's very similar to the Sam Darnold situation from last year, except the key difference here is that Jones is a better running quarterback. And so for fantasy, that is going to give him a relatively high and stable floor. Because he's not thrown for more than one touchdown in any game this year, but he has run for some touchdowns, and he's given you that boost from a fantasy perspective. Now, the reason I'm going to say fake out for Daniel Jones is not because I think he's going to fall apart and turn into this, QB 25 type of player the rest of the season. I think he's going to fall into more of that high-end QB2 range, and so at the quarterback position, where being in the top 10, top 12 is so important. The fact that he's QB4 right now, I don't want people to expect him to be a top 5 guy moving forward. The schedule is not relatively easy. I would say it's a pretty average schedule, but a lot of tough defenses upcoming for the Colts. And I think the key here is that I'm not expecting Daniel Jones to rush for 15 touchdowns. I just don't think he's going to be able to keep up this pace of every game or nearly every game scoring on the ground. I think that you're probably going to get a lot more games like what we just had in week 3 against Tennessee, where a good, solid, stable performance, he's going to get you 15, 16 fantasy points, is getting you 20, 30 rushing yards to help out, but he's not throwing for 300 and 4 touchdowns. It's just not the type of player he is. He does have some good weapons, which I think is why he's still a very stable option in a Superflex league and somebody that you can start depending on the matchup in a single quarterback league. And so good player. I think he's probably going to settle into the QB 10 to 12 range, 10 to 14 range. And so for that reason, I'm going to label him as a fake out, just because I really don't think he has top 5 potential of staying there for a full season. I just don't think he has it from a passing standpoint to be able to get to that level. All right, so moving on over to the running backs. 2 names here. And the first one is Dallas Cowboys running back Javonte Williams. He's currently the running back 7 on the year, and I think he's a breakout. I think it's real. Javonte Williams was a player that there was so much hype for. First couple years in the leagues, he was a really good player coming out of North Carolina, flashed a lot early, but then the injuries. The injuries really, really dampened his career, and it's taken him a long time to get back to looking anything like what he was before coming into the NFL. I certainly think we're getting the best version of him now. He does seem to finally be fully healthy, and he's not really in a backfield where he's got to worry about competition. Miles Sanders is not going to take carries away from Javonte Williams. We saw Sanders get a few carries in a game that got out of hand against Chicago. I think the fact that Williams has been able to maintain a top 10 running back status despite the fact that Dallas has really not looked good. There have been a lot of situations where they're having to pass, play catch up. Certainly if they're without CeeDee Lamb, it's not going to make things any easier. But this is a true 3-down workhorse back. He's getting passing work. He's scoring, he's getting the goal line work and scoring touchdowns. And so I think that the workload that he gets is going to be enough to sustain him as a low-end QB or running back 1, So, again, I don't know if he finishes in the top 7 like he is now, but I think he can be, again, in that sort of 10 to 12, 10 to 14, low-end RB1, high-end RB2 range, which is a significant improvement from what we thought we would be getting from him coming into the season. And so I'm a big fan. Javonte Williams is a player that I think the breakout is for real. The second running back I want to discuss is Pittsburgh Steelers running back Jaylen Warren. He's the RB14 on the season, and he has pretty much made it to where Caleb Johnson is irrelevant for fantasy purposes, at least certainly in redraft. I had him on a team, got rid of him. Dynasty, you're probably really feeling uneasy about your first-round Caleb Johnson pick, and I don't blame you. You should be worried. He didn't see the field last week. He had the error on the kickoff. He hasn't really been getting any work at all at the running back position, and it's been Jaylen Warren and Kenneth Gainwell who's been stealing a little bit of goal line work. And but Jaylen Warren has been the guy. He got a contract extension. He got some praise from Aaron Rodgers in the passing game, and he's been all right. But all that to say, I think it's a fake out from Jaylen Warren. I think that he is not going to be able to sustain the production that he's having. And even if he does still get the workload, which does seem likely, I mean, it does not appear to be the case that Caleb Johnson is going to suddenly break into this backfield. It's looking like it's going to take injury for that to occur this year, which is a really, really bad sign for him. But Jaylen Warren, I think we just know who he is. He is not a top 12 guy. He's not an RB1. He is somebody that can give you low RB2 volume work for fantasy. I mean, this is somebody that he's going to catch a few passes, 3 to 5 per game. He's going to get you 40 yards rushing. I don't think he's going to score a whole lot of touchdowns in the red zone. I don't think he's a goal line guy. I think that's what Gainwell is going to do. And potentially Caleb Johnson, if he sees the field, that is a situation where he could see some work. He's a pass-catching running back that is surviving purely on volume. And while I think that is fine and is certainly a good asset to have, he's a viable flex play. I would feel a bit uneasy with him as my running back 2 in a lineup, although he could be. That's what he's ranked right now, as a high-end RB2. And I don't see that lasting quite to the point that it is. I think a lower-end RB2 is probably more of what he is. I think it's just more of what we've seen throughout his career. Except this time, there is no Najee Harris next to him to, fully relegate him to, one of those 6 or 7 point per game players. He might be at 10. Maybe if he's lucky, he gets to 12. He's had a really nice start to the season, but I'm skeptical. And, I think if he does manage to continue to produce for fantasy football, it is simply because of volume and a complete lack of competition. I think it's opposite to Javonte Williams, where, there might not be competition, but I do think that Javonte Williams still has the talent of, a very good running back, whereas Jaylen Warren, I don't see him from a talent perspective as some, world beater RB1 type of guy. I just don't think it's the case. So I'm not in love with Pittsburgh's offense, and so Jaylen Warren, a fake out. All right, so I have 4 wide receivers, and one of them is tied to one of the quarterbacks we talked about. So let's start with Rome Odunze, who we did name drop earlier, and I think he's a breakout, a legit, real breakout. He is the current wide receiver 3. He scored 4 touchdowns already this season, and he is someone that is locked in as the Bears' number 1 wideout. He has got the trust of Caleb Williams. He clearly is someone that Williams is looking to in the red zone with those touchdowns. There are going to be a couple weeks here and there where we see some of that boom-bust nature that we sometimes get with the bigger body wide receivers where, hey, if they don't score a touchdown, you're stuck with, 3 catches for 30-something yards. We'll probably get a game or 2 like that. But I do think that Odunze is seeing the target numbers that we'd want to see from a true number 1. And he's making plays. He's finding the end zone. The Bears offense, I think, has a fairly light schedule coming up, like I had mentioned earlier. And so I'm excited about the possibilities for Odunze. I've made a pretty big switch, I think, on my opinion of him over the last, couple months. I was all aboard the DJ Moore train, and kind of had been for a while. I have a lot of shares of Moore. I only have one of Odunze, but I think that has fully flipped. We've seen the change. Odunze is the guy. And I think he could absolutely finish the season as a number one wide receiver for fantasy in the top 12. All right, next up is Chargers wide receiver Quentin Johnston. He's currently the wide receiver 8. He's leading the Chargers in yards, and it's been a pretty amazing turnaround for Johnston because this was a guy that pretty much everyone wrote off after year one as a bust. He had an okay year two, but nothing special. Someone that maybe you could swap in on a bye week, but a rotation guy at best, not somebody that you were starting on a week-to-week basis. This year, you could have started Quentin Johnston every single week and you'd feel great. He's scoring touchdowns, he's catching deep balls, leading the team, in yardage, and all that to say, I think it's a fake out. I love the Chargers offense, but I just have a hard time seeing this lasting at the level that it currently is. Now, again, I want to be a little nuanced about that. I know that, being nuanced on, talk shows and podcasts and things like that, it's not something that people love. They want that all or nothing type of take. But I think when you examine players in this way, I think you have to be a bit nuanced. And Quentin Johnston, I think, can be a good wide receiver. It's kind of similar to the Daniel Jones, situation that we talked about, where I think he can be good. I just don't think he's going to be this good for the whole season. So Quentin Johnston, I think, can be a wide receiver 3 or a low-end wide receiver 2. And if you're lucky, maybe even a mid-range wide receiver 2. But I don't think that Quentin Johnston is going to finish the year as a top 12 number 1 wide receiver. I just don't think he's going to keep that up. He's not even the number 1 receiver for fantasy on his own team. Keenan Allen actually holds that distinction despite having fewer yards. And I think it's much more for real with Keenan Allen than Quentin Johnston. So while I can appreciate and love that after a couple down years, he's broken out. He clearly has a good role in this offense. Ladd McConkey has really taken a hit so far to start the year, almost a direct one-to-one comparison with Keenan Allen. I mean, Keenan Allen has really, really hurt Ladd McConkey. And Quentin Johnston, though, has really fit in well, having those two underneath threats. He can stretch the field. He's still got great speed, and the Chargers have found a really good way to use him. So I think he can be productive. I think for now, you pretty much keep him in your lineup until he gives you a reason not to. I think that's the case with just about every single player on this in this entire show today. You're going to start them until they bust or give you a reason not to play them. But expecting Quentin Johnston to be a top 10, top 12 guy the rest of the season, I think would be expecting a bit too much. And there are going to be some duds that get thrown in. He's a great player for best ball. And certainly a good player to throw in your lineup as a flex, but I would caution you on, overvaluing him so far with, the fact that there are so many other good receivers. However, the one thing that all this does really say, here talking about Ladd McConkey and Keenan Allen and Quentin Johnston, Justin Herbert is in line for a huge season. I think he's probably the early favorite in the league for MVP. And the Chargers are 3-0. So big fan of everything that's going on with that offense. Rip to Najee Harris. His career might be over with that pretty gruesome injury that we saw, the Achilles. But the passing game has really been working well. And it speaks volumes that you have 3 receivers that I think you can feel completely comfortable putting in a lineup. And that certainly bodes well for Justin Herbert. All right, so the third receiver I want to discuss is Emeka Egbuka, Tampa Bay wide receiver, currently the wide receiver 10 on the season, rookie out of Ohio State, and I think he absolutely is a breakout. It's 100% for real. This guy's legit. He was probably the most pro-ready wide receiver in the rookie draft class. I think that, there certainly, was the upside with Tedero McMillan and Travis Hunter as the 2 guys that could end up as, number 1 wide receivers in terms of like overall fantasy scoring. But so far, Egbuka has been the best pro, so far in the very short careers for those 3 guys. And he's got a real opportunity to continue as a wide receiver 1 and keep his spot in the top 10 because Mike Evans out with an injury for at least a few weeks. Chris Godwin has been slow to come back from his injury. It sounds like he may return here in week 4, but if not week 4, likely week 5. And Egbuka's the guy. Baker Mayfield off to a good start, and Tampa Bay undefeated. So, full steam ahead on Emeka Egbuka. He is someone that I think will struggle to ever be. I don't think he's going to be like a number 1 overall wideout, right? I think he still has a bit of a cap ceiling in terms of what he can ultimately be, but there is no reason that he cannot be a top 12 receiver this year. He's got the opportunity. He's got the quarterback. He's in a good offense. And the situation has just worked out to be very nice for him, where in the offseason, the speculation was, Chris Godwin's going to be back. You got Mike Evans. He's going to be the number 3. What about Jalen McMillan, who had a nice rookie season? What's going to work out for Egbuka? Is he going to be the number 4? But no, he is, as of right now, he is the number 1 in Tampa Bay. And so all aboard the train for Egbuka. I think he's absolutely going to have a real, true breakout, and I'm very excited to see what's to come for him. All right, now the final receiver is San Francisco 49ers wide receiver Ricky Pearsall. He is the wide receiver 16 so far through 3 weeks, and this is another guy that I think the breakout's for real. He has benefited, of course, from the situation with injuries to Juwan Jennings, and George Kittle has missed some time. Brandon Ayuk is still not back. So definitely benefited from the lack of competition. However, this is what Ricky Pearsall was drafted to do. A surprise first-round pick. He's done it both with Brock Purdy and Mac Jones. San Francisco is undefeated to start the year. They have a very easy schedule throughout the season. So I think you can expect wide receiver 2 numbers from Ricky Pearsall the rest of the way. Do I think wide receiver 1 is in the cards? No. But at wide receiver 16, if he can finish in that 16 to 20 range, I think that would be an awesome, awesome fantasy year for Ricky Pearsall, and would certainly qualify this beginning to the year as a real breakout. This is a team that Kittle is expected back at some point, but remains to be seen exactly when that will be. He's on IR. Christian McCaffrey has carried a huge workload. He's got some injury issues, of course, that everyone knows about. So you never know. I mean, the target share, I think, is going to remain pretty consistent because Jennings up and down with more injuries. I don't think you can really count on Ayuk when he comes back. I think that's a huge question mark and will certainly eat into some of the workload. But for now, Ricky Pearsall seems to be the real deal and the true number 1 target for that offense in the passing game. All right, now 2 tight ends to bring up. We got to talk about the tight end 1 overall on the season in PPR and tight end premium leagues, and that is Dallas Cowboys tight end Jake Ferguson, 26 years old. He's got 32 targets and 27 catches in 3 weeks, which is insane, especially for a tight end. So it's almost like a trick question, it feels like, with Jake Ferguson, because I think we kind of know what he is, but this is a real breakout for this season. Now, I don't know that this is going to be something where this continues on and he's just some elite tight end for the next 5 seasons. I do not think that's the case. But for this season only, for 2025, I think it's a real breakout because Dallas is going to be playing from behind. They're going to be having to catch up to a lot of teams. They're going to be in a lot of high-scoring games with their bad defense. CeeDee Lamb injured. George Pickens is there, but we've seen with Lamb and then Pickens that Ferguson is still getting a ton of work. So I see no reason why that would slow down. Jake Ferguson, just has a really good connection with Dak Prescott. And the injuries have hurt Ferguson in his career, but and he's not exactly like the most athletic player. And typically tight end is one of the positions in fantasy where athleticism does play into the overall output a bit more than some of the other positions. But Ferguson has kind of defied that. He has been consistent, steady. He's got good hands, and he just has been able to get open, catch the ball, and the volume is going to be crazy this year for him. And so if he can continue this pace up, he absolutely will finish the season as a top 5 tight end. Someone that is currently ranked as a top 5 tight end is Buffalo Bills tight end Dalton Kincaid. He is the tight end 5, and he had a touchdown, nice play last week, but it's something where I think that Dalton Kincaid is a fake out. I don't believe that you're going to be getting a top 5 season from Dalton Kincaid. I think you still need to worry about competition at the position. Not so much in terms of stealing fantasy output. Dawson Knox and then, the rookie out of Georgia Tech that they have, who also got a touchdown last week. I don't think that those guys are certainly not better than Dalton Kincaid, but Kincaid is still only getting about 50% of the snaps. And so from a fantasy football perspective, where you're looking for a guy that's really, in the 75, 80% plus range for the position to really give you great numbers, he just isn't that guy. They don't trust him in the run game or as a blocker. When he's out there, it's, a lot of teams know that the ball is going to be going through the air. And so is he going to score a couple touchdowns and have, a couple catches per game? Sure. He's not a bad player, certainly not a bad fantasy option, but I'm not expecting him to have the type of volume to keep him in the top 5. I just don't see that as long as he's getting 50% of snaps. He's got to pump those numbers up, and then we can come back and talk about, him being in the upper echelon at the position. But I think it's a bit of, fool's gold with him, and that's why Dalton Kincaid is a fake out for his hot start to the season. All right, so there you have it. There are 10 players, breakout or fake out, here through 3 weeks, and we'll be back with another show next week. Appreciate you guys sticking with us after the delay this week, celebrating an anniversary with my wife. So I had to go out, have some fun, and enjoy that time, and record this a day late. So we should be back on track next week, though. So stay tuned for that. We're going to get into some trade targets, I think, over the next couple of shows. It's a really good time of year, I think, after week 4 to start digging into trades. Weeks 4 through 6 are really a really good time to do that. So we're going to talk about that and more on future shows, and we'll have some fun with that. So thank you all very much for listening. This is the Dynasty War Room podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Valancourt, and we will talk to you all next week.